The file browser that comes with Photoshop is called Bridge, and Bridge has gotten some changes in CS5 as well. One of the biggest ones is actually called Mini Bridge. All right, and what it lets you do is because Bridge is a separate program. All right, so here's Photoshop, right? If I come over here to File, I can go to Browse in Bridge, and that opens it up the basically the file browser, which is what we call Bridge. Okay, and you can navigate around and do all kinds of different things in Bridge. So Bridge is not new, although there are a couple new features with it. What they have done is put what they call Mini Bridge inside of Photoshop. It's that little MB icon, and what it does is it brings some of the features and functionality of Bridge directly into Photoshop. It's almost kind of interesting to see the evolution because we started off with what was called the file browser inside of Photoshop. Okay, it was actually a part of Photoshop, and then it was changed to be called Bridge, and it actually went to its own application, and now we're kind of coming into this this area where we've got both of them. Okay. Well, as you go through here, it's all pretty straightforward. It's letting you browse through a folder, and you can see you've got this whole navigation area up here. It's letting you browse through certain folders. You've got favorites over here, and you can kind of just come through there and click on it. If you wanted to go to certain folders on your computer, you just click on your computer icon there, and it'll let you actually navigate through all the folders on your computer, although I personally use the favorites more. Okay, so that's how you can kind of get to the stuff. Once you click on a folder down here under content, that's where you're going to see all the different images that are inside of that folder. You've got a little kind of a thumbnail slider down here, which makes things larger or makes them smaller, depending on which way you drag. Okay, you've even got, when you click over to the right of that, you've got different modes that you can set your images to view in. So if I wanted to go into slideshow mode, if I click on a photo here and I go into, let's say, slideshow mode, it brings me into this slideshow or review mode, depending on which icon you click. I think I clicked on, yeah, so there's review, and then there's slideshow, which takes you into just a one image on the page type of a view. All right, the next icon over is the format in which you want to see these things. Okay, do you want to see them as thumbnails? Do you want to see it as a film strip, as details, as a list? Here's kind of a neat way to think about incorporating Mini Bridge, because as you're working, this Mini Bridge is going to start to come over your photos. If I had a photo open right now, in fact, one of the things that you can do from here is open photos. So if I just double click on a photo, it opens it right up. I don't have to exit out of here. I don't have to go find it over here in Bridge and double click on it just to get back into Photoshop. You can just double click right from here and open it. Okay. But one of the cool things that you can think of using Mini Bridge, because I don't want it protruding out into my photos all the time, is to pull it off of where it's docked and to put it right down here, right at the bottom. And of course, let's get rid of that. And we don't want it to be so big, so we just bring it down in size. And now what we're doing is it's kind of this little mini film strip view down here. All right, when you click on that, you'll see we're viewing it as a film strip instead. So now we can get a view of what's in these folders and be able to look at the different photos that we're working with, but we can also still keep our photo front and center on the screen. We don't have to have a panel that's kind of intruding over it. So that's one way to consider it, or of course you can just come back and just dock it right back up to where it used to be. All right, so let's go through a couple other things here. If you click on that, you'll see just some recent folders that you've been inside. And a lot of this functionality is the same in Mini Bridge as it is over in Bridge. Okay, so some of these things are really not new. Okay, the little history icon over here, that's not new. That's been there for a while. It's new to Mini Bridge. You can go home, of course. You can click on the Bridge icon, which takes you directly to Adobe Bridge, which is what we keep bouncing back and forth with here. All right. And then if you click on this icon, you'll see that you can show and hide, like the navigation, they call it the navigation pod. You can show and hide that navigation pod there if it's taking up too much space. If you just want to keep the little thumbnails and the folders as large as you can get rid of that navigation area. And then, of course, as you click on this, the little search icon, it'll let you search your computer or use Bridge's advanced search. Okay, and the last thing that you want to take a look at are the little icons down here. So these are basically filtering icons. So you can filter, you can show rejected and hidden and all your folders or whatnot. When you click on the next one, you can show 1 stars, 2 stars, labeled, all those different things. The next one over from that is going to let you sort by file name, date created, size, all the different stuff there. And then finally, the last one over here, it's probably one of the most useful parts of Mini Bridge, I think, personally, which is it lets you jump to certain Photoshop functions right from within Mini Bridge. Okay, so if I wanted to batch process or go into image processor or even the new HDR, all right, well, if I've got my photos selected over here in Mini Bridge, I don't have to exit out of here, go into Bridge, come up here to the tools menu, go down to Photoshop, where I have basically the same things. I don't have to do that. I can get straight to it right from here. Just go to Photoshop and I can do my panos. I can do my panos all from within Photoshop now. I don't have to have Bridge to kind of browse them visually and figure it out. So that really helps out as well. So that's your Mini Bridge. I'm going to jump over here to Bridge because there are, in the full version of Bridge, there are a couple of new features here as well. Probably the biggest one, I think, is this whole export panel. Okay, because what this does is this lets you come up with export presets for saving groups of photos. All right, so here's an example. Let's come down here and let's just actually click on one of these guys to open up and add a preset. So you pick a destination, publish to original file locus, publish to a specific, let's original file location. Okay, and then save to a subfolder. We'll just name export panel test is what we'll call it. So that way we can actually find this in a second when we need to. Create unique file names. That's good. Image options, don't resize. Let's actually turn on. Let's turn on constrain to fit, and let's type in 600 here. And that's going to constrain it to fit 600. Resampling, always render full size image quality because these are going to automatically be saved as JPEGs. So we'll just leave that set to a quality of 8. Include your original metadata. Everything's good. We'll call this Mats preset, and we'll click on save. All right, so that saves the preset over here in the list. All right, and it's important to remember that the preset is just a preset at this point. In order to use it, what you do is just take a photo, click on it, and drag over it, and you'll see I can just click on the little arrow here. It starts it. It shows you that it's running. We'll clear the list and close that. And now if you look over, remember I told it to save it into the original folder. So export panel test is now here in a folder. And if I look inside of there, there's a photo. If I look at the size of it, you will indeed see that it was resized and constrained to 600 pixels, which is what I had typed into that list there. All right, so that to me is probably one of the cooler ones because you can save these little presets. If you're constantly saving images to send in an email or put onto the web or something like that, you've got a very quick way to be able to just drag these images right over onto the preset. You don't have to open up dialogues and retype in your settings and things like that. All right, a couple other things here. We have, let's go take a look over here under output to web or PDF. All right, that's not new inside of Bridge. But what is new is as you scroll down on the list here, you're going to see you have the ability to add a watermark to your images. So if I were going to save these images to a web gallery, which is the option to the right here, or a PDF, which is the option on the left, I can now insert a watermark onto the image themselves. Okay, so if we come over here into Photoshop, let's go ahead and create a brand new file, and I'll take my copyright shape tool here. It's right over here. We'll go to the custom shapes, and then you'll see right up here in the list, you've got that little copyright tool. Well, one of the things I can do is double click the layer, and let's hide Mini Bridge for a second here. Double click the layer. This is going to open up the layer style dialog box. I want to add a bevel and emboss. I'm going to go to blending options, and I'm going to take my fill all the way down to 0. So what I essentially have here is a bevel and emboss with no color to it. And if I delete the background layer, I've now got this kind of clear watermark look to my image. So we're going to save this, and let's save it onto our desktop. I've already got one. We'll call it watermark.psd. Save it. I'll hit replace. We're all good there. Now when I come back over here to Bridge, and inside of that path, I'm just going to click here, and I'm going to just find my watermark PSD file. And Bridge is going to now use that as my watermark. Now, I will say this, I'm working on a beta version of CS5 because you're watching this when it comes out. So it's still a test version. So I'm going to refresh the preview. And for the most part, it usually does pretty good. But as you can see here, it's kind of gotten a little bit funky. So it's a work in progress, but my guess is by the time you guys get this, it's all going to work very well. And you've got a scale setting over here: opacity, horizontal offset, vertical offset. And every time that you change those things, you just come up here and you can refresh the preview, and that way you'll be able to get a look to see what your watermark's going to look like on the image itself. All right, let's come up here to the window menu, and I'm just going to reset my standard workspaces for a sec. All right, and the last thing here, which is actually kind of cool if you use the feature a lot, all right, and it's under batch renaming. When you come up to the top menu here, you're going to see that batch rename is there, and batch rename has actually been around for quite a while, all right, but when you open it up, you're going to see a couple different things up here, and one of them is presets, which we didn't have, but you'll see, you've got last used, and then you've got default. Well, there's one called string substitution. And what's cool about this is it'll actually let you find certain strings. And when they say string, that's just a techie way of saying text. To find a certain group or lettering, an order of text, and replace it with something else. So for example, the name of the image I have selected here is Camera Raw. And I think it's, what the heck did I call that? Camera Raw something or other with parentheses. So let's say I tell it to find raw and replace it with matte. How's that for you? All right. So it's going to look inside of the actual name of this file, and it's going to leave everything else the same except where it sees the word raw or the letters raw, and it's going to replace that with matte. All right. So let's go ahead and hit rename, and you'll see in just a second there, camera matte. So just if you're renaming your files, it's one of those features that people who wanted to do this are now rejoicing over the fact that they have this. If it's not something you ever needed to do, to go through all your file names and just change a certain area, then probably not that big of a deal. But if you ever do need it, it's going to be a huge lifesaver for you, because you don't have to manually go in there and rename all those images. Okay, so there you have a couple of new improvements with Bridge, as well as the brand new mini bridge that they've added into Photoshop.